Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, August 26, 2026, and today we're going to be answering three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days. And what a 7 days it's been. We all know that last week we saw the initial lawsuit and request for an injunction against the implementation of the end of DS rule that's due to take place on September 15th. That was the big story last week, and we certainly covered that well. But what I would like to do today is one of the first questions we'll talk about is related to that as well, because it is that important that we express just how outrageous this end of DS rule is in terms of an upheaval it is causing and will cause to our international education profession here in the United States. So before we do that, as we do each week on the Roundup, we take our questions from our newsletter that comes out on Mondays, Monday mornings, and that's on our newsletter. We have that available at smieconsulting.org/subscribe. There are two ways to subscribe, either to the email version or to the LinkedIn version. Both are available on that. Subscription links to those are available on that website link I just provided. It's also on our Facebook live chat if you're joining us live. For those that are watching on repeat, if you just go to smieconsulting.org/subscribe, you'll be able to get to those links. Both versions, between the two of them, we are now reaching over 3,300 international educators every week, and so proud that so many of my colleagues in this field that I've been in for 33 years now are getting this content every week in their email inboxes. So thank you all for being a part of the conversation. We're going to get into those questions in just a moment here, but we are on the Roundup. We take the news stories that we see on Mondays and we focus more in depth on three main questions that we see developing, and to give you kind of our food for thought or next level thoughts on how we can adjust what we're doing internationally on our campuses with our how we advocate, how we message, how we approach international students abroad to make sure that we have the right kind of a strategy that meets students where they are with on the platforms they're using, with the messages that make sense, and using the variety of tools that you can, and with partners and peers and personas that you can be using to make sure you make all connections the most productive possible. So the final section of the newsletter is our global roundup, where we also spend time seeing what's going on in other major destinations. And we all know the big four: US, UK, Canada, Australia. We all know the self-inflicted wounds that each of the big four have inflicted upon themselves in recent years to limit international students' interest in their countries. We're certainly getting more than our fair share of it this year, but we're not Canada. Sorry to my Canadian friends, but they've had it a lot worse. They seem to be reorganizing in some ways. They've had some significant drops, significant layoffs, significant closures in the private college sector on the vocational side, and obviously some layoffs on the public side as well that have really wrecked the international education sector north of the border, and they're in recovery mode. We are still hell bent for leather on destroying ourselves as a nation with regards to international education with the policies of this government. Obviously, those of us in international education, 99% of us are not supporters of any of these policies. We're certainly in the wrong field if we are in support of those policies. But we know what has happened in the last 18 months of this administration has truly devastated what we've been trying to build in this country. We know we saw articles last week and again this week of the significant drops in visa approvals in 2025 versus 23, and those drops are cumulative, obviously, in terms of the knock-on effects in India and in China especially, where those two countries used to be about 50% of the global total of U.S. student visas awarded each year. They're now down under 33%. Well, maybe I guess that's a one way to diversify your international enrollments. And for those institutions that are making that a priority or have been making that a priority, they're probably in less danger of falling apart. Those who haven't and are still heavily dependent on India and China are the ones that are going to be experiencing 25, 30% or more declines in their new international enrollments this month or next. So let's get straight to the first question of the week, and that is, what is 0.1% worth for international education? Now, you may be asking, where does that 0.1%, where does that come from? There was a Higher Ed Dive article this week that talked about the coalition's lawsuit and some of the insight behind the numbers of, or behind the rationale on the government side for imposing this end of DS rule that, again, was proposed a year ago and is now being implemented after 22,000 public comments and supposedly a fulsome review and updates to the rule, which there were none. That was released in the middle of July, and the implementation date is 6 days hence, and that puts us to September 15th. The lawsuit requests an injunction in addition to the challenge. Injunction to the implementation on September 15th, in addition to the request to overturn this end of DS rule if the injunction doesn't work and it does take effect. The lawsuit is to overturn it as well. So why? And the Higher Ed Dive does do a good job in providing us the much needed data that kind of shows the rationale for the sweeping changes that are being requested, and the folks who represent DHS are absolute buffoons, I have to say, and the spokespeople here. The emailed statement Tuesday, DHS spokesperson, this is in the Higher Ed Dive article, where was the outrage when foreign nationals were abusing the system, violating the terms of their student visas, and making a mockery of our immigration laws? Well, let's talk about abusing the system and violating the terms of their student visas. Do you know how many students they were talking about that are the reason for this implementation of this end of DS rule? And that the DHS also goes on to say that this periodically assessing student visa stays would allow it to better detect and mitigate the risks of abuse. Okay, let's talk about what those risks are. Overstays, right? Or staying far too long, when the reality is the law allowed them to stay. And let's just say if there were half of the international students that were enrolled in the United States right now had been in the U.S. more than 10 years, that might be a problem. That might be abuse. But again, they're legally able to do that. So is it really abuse? So let's look at what the actual numbers are. And the actual numbers of the abuse of the system are 2,000 F&J visas over a period. Let's make sure I give you the exact numbers. That 2,100 international students, from the article again, this is from DHS directly, 2,100 international students who entered the United States between the year 2000 and 2010 still held an active F visa status as of April 2025. So that's anywhere from 15 to 25 years. Excuse me. And those numbers, 2,100, and that's out of how many international students when this data was taken? That's out of 1.6 million in 2024. That is the basis for this end of DS rule, that there was abuse in the system, rampant abuse. What does that percentage work out to be? 2,100 out of 1.6 million students, international students. That works out to be 0.0013%. And that means less than 1/10 of 1% of all international students were in this overstay category, that rampant abuse. And where was the outrage? There wasn't outrage because it wasn't a problem. When you have a few students that are learning how to play the system. And that happens in every country. That happens with every visa status. There are people who learn how to play the game. And that's just the nature of the beast. Are any of these people doing anything illegal? No, because it's part of the immigration law that allows them to stay in legal status as stay in F1 status as long as they're maintaining progress in their degrees, and maybe they do multiple degrees in master's level. But to change everything of how international education is conducted in the United States in terms of management of international students on campus, the limits that they can be in the country or be allowed to stay in their program, even though two of the programs that they're talking about, bachelor's and PhD programs, the average countrywide for even domestic students is more than the 4-year maximum. And that having to apply, if you at the end of if you do finish your degree in 4 years, you have to apply for an extension and for OPT at the same time. It's a money grab. It's a money grab by DHS. Money grab to hire more staff that are going to be people who are not educators, who are going to be making education-related decisions on whether students are able to extend their stay. Well, they've been in the US 4 years, they should be finishing their doctorate. No, they shouldn't. No one does. Unless they already have a master's degree and have already done some PhD level work. That just doesn't happen. But that doesn't matter to DHS. That doesn't matter to this administration, who have shown their true colors and are finally making clear to all who care and know anything about immigration that, hey, it doesn't matter whether you're illegal or legal, we're going to make it as difficult as possible for you to stay in the country. And that's, or remove you completely if you're on the illegal side. So this is the government's approach to everything related to immigration. And we've seen stories in the last couple of weeks that there have been more legal immigrants and non-immigrants in the U.S. that have been denied entry than illegals that have been denied entry or removed since this administration took office in January 2025. So the data is clear. This administration has an all-out assault on international students. And unfortunately, our students, the ones on campus now, are getting caught in the middle. But thank goodness for the consortium that have filed this lawsuit against the government, against DHS, to have us basically overturn the rule so it won't get implemented, and to stay or have an injunction that will prevent the implementation on September 15th. That's we hopefully get a reasonable judge, and maybe it will go to the Supreme Court. But I can see this bouncing around the courts for months, and hopefully that delays the implementation, which will give us on campus a chance to continue to serve the students under the existing regulations, and which is what they've been operating under since the 70s here in the United States. So to upturn everything for 0.1% in terms of rampant fraud is a joke. And that's why this lawsuit should be upheld. This lawsuit attacking the government's right to impose this new law, and the injunction should be upheld, and hopefully it'll make its way through the courts sooner rather than later. But for our current students, it is something that is on their minds, and for future students, it is a reason why they might not come now. And if our government is sending messages that you're not welcome here, which is antithesis of what we believe on campus, in our colleges, and in our international offices, in our communities, frankly, where we know our students, once they get on campus, we take care of them. We look after them. And then when we did our orientation last week for our students at the University of Akron, we saw it up front and personal. They are so glad to be here. And I reminded them just how brave they are. For making the journey to come to study with us. And I can't say it enough about how important it is that we stick together and we defend and advocate for our students as long as we can, as ferociously as we can, and respectfully as we can in the right audiences. Obviously, I have a platform here that allows me to do that. My opinions are my own, not the University's of Akron's. But it is clear that no one in international education is happy with what's been going on, and everyone in international education should be in support of this coalition effort to overturn the end of DS rule. So that's all. I'm getting. I don't want my blood pressure to spike too much today. So that's all we have on that particular topic. We do know that there's going to be a lot, obviously, a lot more written about this that will impact future opportunities or future legislation. There was also a chance for a congressional review, but going into the midterms, that's increasingly unlikely that we'll ever see anything like that. But I do want to move on to our second question of the day, and that is, does our messaging match what future students are making decisions on? And this is coming off a couple of stories, mostly surrounding a new 2026 Navitas Agent Perception Survey that sheds some light on what international students are thinking right now and what their behaviors are. But there are two prevailing themes that in ICF Monitor they point out in their article. One, that students are anxious, including about AI's impact on their career choice. And two, they're considering a wider range of study abroad options and carefully evaluating risk and reward. I wonder what that could be about. We know what the risks are, we know what the rewards are. And some countries are making it much easier for international students to apply and to be admitted and to even have very clear pathways to work and potentially residency in their countries because they need the skilled labor in their countries. We've seen a lot of that happening in East Asia. We're seeing that. We should be doing that here in the U.S., where we see a domestic enrollment cliff that we've gone over this past year, and thankfully, I can say at Akron we're overall up 1% in terms of the university, and for our international students, we're going to be up anywhere from 10 to 20% when all the dust is settled with late arrivals and late visas, and military opportunities to have their military service postponed. So there's all of that going on, and we're in a very unique position. I don't think there are too many of us that can honestly say 10 to 20% up internationally and 1% overall, particularly in the Midwest and Northeast, where domestic enrollment numbers outside of the elites, obviously they always get theirs, and they never really have to worry about applications or enrolled students. They're going to get more than their fair share. But this Navitas Agent Survey really does make clear that, hey, students are aware of what's going on in the wider world, from both the ICF Monitor piece and from the Koala News, which is another international ed outlet based in Australia. Obviously, Koala makes sense there. There are a couple. They've got their own take on it as well. And both of the articles make clear that students see what's happening with the government restrictions and price increases in Australia for visas, in terms of the quotas that universities have there for maximum number of international students. In Canada, they're still rebounding from the study permit caps that were put in place in 24 and 25 and 26. They weren't even close to hitting their caps because of the image damage done by these caps, and that clearly made international students not feel welcome there, even though the reality on the ground is that, like here in the U.S., we take care of our students and they take care of theirs once they get on campus in the majority of all campuses. So students are savvy about what's going on in the wider world, and we have to take that into consideration. There's hard data over the last 2-3 years since the pandemic, really, of international students now applying to multiple destinations, countries, not just multiple institutions in one country. They're now applying to multiple institutions in multiple countries. So it's incumbent on us to make sure that if we want to have a chance at reaching that student in terms of convincing that student that we're the right institution for them, we have to have messaging that reflects what we're really all about. And how do we do that? We do that by sharing the reality on the ground of what our current students are experiencing, the ones that they might want to be like if they were to make it through the gauntlet of our immigration system and make it to the U.S., assuming that they can be admitted and all of that is good. But those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves in our messaging. Are we showcasing our current students who are particularly uh, ideal for sharing how particularly the ones that just arrived. I'll be going to campus in about 10 days, and I'll be doing interviews with several of our new students that just started this past week, or this week. This is the first day of class, and I'll be asking all of them, hey. Tell me about your experiences. What's it been like? You're here now. You've just arrived. You've gone through the visa process. Tell me what it was like. And those real stories are what future students want to hear when it's giving them assurance about, hey, you're going to be well taken care of once you get on campus. You're going to be in a great community. There's a great campus environment. There's so much to do, so many resources that you never feel alone. All of that is what we're trying to engender for our students, right? We do that on all of our campuses in various ways. But the more we can showcase those moments to future students and say, hey, we're open for business. We're welcoming you with open arms, and we want you here, and you belong here. Is one of our key messages out. And yes, you can is something we want to encourage all of our students to try. Yes, you can apply. Yes, you can be admitted. Yes, you can get a scholarship. Yes, you can come to the University of Akron and have incredible experience on campus and be connected with all sorts of pre-job placements and experiences before you graduate that help you figure out if it's the career you have intended to do going in is really what you want to get into. And we make sure you have those opportunities before you finish your degree to sample, hey, what's it like to work in this industry, through research, through jobs, through all of these kind of things. And that's how we are, what our experiences are, and that's what distinguishes us over and above our competition, not only in the United States but around the world. Knowing how to articulate the selling points about not just your institution but the United States that are different than most of the rest of the world. If you can't do that effectively in terms of highlighting the strengths of pre-graduation work opportunities and internships and all of those kind of experiential learning that we talk about. If you don't talk about your community that you have on campus and how significant that is, because you don't know what you don't know as an international student if you've not been on a college campus in the U.S. before. You have to be able to paint that picture of what it's really going to be like for them. And if you can't, and it shouldn't be just you doing it as an international admissions person. It should be your current students. It should be your alumni. It should be your faculty that are the ones that are on the ground doing it, living it, that are the best examples of why students should come. Now, one of those things in that agent survey that is particularly damning for the United States is that I think one of the things that was about approval ratings, and I think New Zealand according to the survey, I think was 78%. I think in the Navitas survey indicated that they had a favorable view of. 88% of agents agreeing strongly that New Zealand was safe and stable for international students. That's followed by Australia, which remained steady on 77%, Canada, which recovered from a record low last year to 68%, UK continues steady fall from a high of 84 to 65%, and then the US remained at 31% favorability rating as a safe and stable environment for international students. That about says it all. And that's the message that agents potentially are passing along to their students. And if we don't have real stories that can counteract that on our campus, that might be their general impression about the U.S. because of the visa situation, because of the policy decisions, all of that. But unless we have data to counter that, we're facing an extremely uphill climb to try and convince students. That's our last question of the day, which related to this Navitas survey is that about messaging is how has New Zealand rebuilt its international ed sector? And New Zealand, as many of you who've been following our midweek roundups and our newsletters over the past 5 years, certainly since the pandemic. We all know that New Zealand was one of the first to shut down and had probably some of the strictest, as an island nation, had some of the strictest rules regarding entry into the country during the pandemic, and they were very slow to recover coming out of the pandemic. So They dropped, and they don't have a lot of institutions. They have 8 universities and a couple dozen polytechnics, they call them, for vocational education, that are expanding into university level studies for bachelor's degrees. So what they have done is rebuilt slowly. That they've also had to rebuild public confidence, because part of the net effect of the country shutting down and being slow to reopen is that people were hesitant to welcome with open arms international students, amongst other immigrant communities. But the research published late last year, 77% of New Zealanders now see the benefit of international students, and 77% would like to see the same number or more international students coming to New Zealand. So those are the kind of growth indicators and experiential data. Again, the student satisfaction, or the agent survey, showing 88% see New Zealand as safe and dependable and stable. Stable is the key word there. Stable for international students. Those are certainly factors that have allowed New Zealand to rebound quicker. Not quicker, but in a more structured way. You also see there have been new post-study work rules in New Zealand that have broadened the appeal of the country to allow more international students to continue get professional training in their programs and job experience in their programs after they're done with their degrees. So that's opened the door, again, adding value to the whole experience of coming to New Zealand. So New Zealand is doing it. They're playing to their strengths, the safe and stable part, that they're welcoming to international students, and that shows, and that impacts future students' interest. So we aren't able to do that from our government side right now. Education USA is being incredibly hamstrung. We know that there's been huge consolidation in terms of where visas are even issued in Africa, where there's less than half of Africa has U.S. consulates or embassies open for business now for student visas. So that poses huge challenges. Yes, half the continent is inaccessible for students right now, for student visa holders to come to the United States, because unless they're already in the U.S., student visa interested students can't come right now from half the continent. So the challenge is only 20 countries have these processing centers for that can do visa appointments. But 5 of those are in visa travel ban countries, oddly enough. So really, students from all across the continent that aren't in a travel ban country have 20 options to go to, and 5 of those options are travel ban countries themselves. So very strange opportunities happening there. We know advising in the Middle East has been completely revamped. We know places like Amadis that used to do advising in half of the countries across Europe, across the Middle East and North Africa. They lost their jobs basically earlier this year. Some of them were fortunate enough to move into embassies, which decided to continue advising, but they've limited their staff. Other regions, they don't do a lot of outreach anymore. Certainly not doing fairs in India, which is unbelievable in that country, that size. There are no Ed USA fairs that they're doing the sponsoring. So there's just been example after example across the globe of how in the U.S. we're making it increasingly harder, not only abroad, but at home as well. And in other countries like New Zealand, they're making it easier and are portraying an image of being safe and stable. So until that changes in the United States, and the next presidential election is the next clear divide that we could potentially have from where we are now to where we potentially can get back to in terms of portraying the United States as a welcoming destination for international students. The midterms, if they go the way of the Democrats, or in at least one of the 2 houses, will forestall any future immigration law changes that might be put forward, but we know that there will be others. We know OPT is on the radar too, and we know they want to put a fee on for OPT. They've just redone their $100,000 fee for H-1B and now calling it $103,000, even though the $100,000 fee was struck down. And they're now saying $103,000 for H-1B. So very, very bizarre the way this administration has been operating, and we see nothing but legal challenges to everything that's being put up, which is great that that's happening, because if it weren't happening, we might as well shut up shop and just deal with the students we have, and then put up a for sale sign on our institutions that have become heavily dependent on international students, because those that are too dependent for tuition revenue are the ones that are going to truly suffer by not having diversified enrollments, by having too many opportunities go by the wayside when our government shuts down pathways to us. So that's what we have for you today on the Roundup. Peachy news all the way around. So congratulations to my Kiwi friends for having a government that supports you and is ready to open up the doors a little wider for international students, and I wish you all the best there. So that's all we have for you this week. We will do another 2 roundups before travel begins for this fall term. We'll be back with you again next Wednesday, and again the first full week of September before we hit the road. So until next time, have a great week. Cheers.